We learned over past 4 years how to make that difficult path of building an innovative business much easier, and how to, or what to do in order to simply have fun while doing business. And what I want to show you today is, for example, these are the people that we're doing businesses with. And as a matter of fact, the pictures of these people are taken usually at the very beginning of their path, when they're just setting up the business shortly after signing an investment contract. And that's a very happy moment for everybody. Well, about 2 years down the road, quite a lot of them are very tired and frustrated. Maybe not that much with taxes, but with the complexity of issues and problems they have to solve, with the fact that all the plans they had, they don't really realize, with the change that they have to cope with the unexpected things that happen, with the risks that they have not thought about, with pretty much all those things that Anya Heika was telling about. And with all these questions that people ask to them, with the investors that, you know, ask basically about all the things that Anya has said. Well, what we've designed is, and what I want to tell you about is how to avoid some of these problems and what to do actually in a positive sense to help you go through the challenges and have fun with it. And I will be telling you today about 4 things. Thinking outside the box, thinking inside the box, prototyping and testing, and a simple way for holistic approach or holistic look at your business. Some of the tools that I'll be telling you about you may know, but some of them will be probably for you completely new. And one of them, and this is something that I would like to interact with you a little bit, one of the tools that I want to show you that is actually a lot of fun to do, but also allows to generate really, really innovative ideas and helps problem solving, is subtracting. And I want to involve you a little bit. Could you tell me pretty much which kind of industry you're linked with? Like, are there people from ICT here or linked with ICT? Biotech. Okay, and could you just tell me some others? Entertainment, energy. Okay, so if there are different people from different, places or different expertise, let's take something very simple like a bottle. Okay. Bottle has got, what are the components, elements of a bottle? Can you tell me? Yes. What else? The neck. What else? The bottom, right? Glass. So, okay, it's 3 elements, right? Are they absolutely, substantial for the bottle to be a bottle? Right. Okay, now please imagine. Okay, so it's a shape then of something that holds let's say the liquid inside, right? So imagine that the bottle does not have the neck, and imagine that the bottle, the other option, does not have the bottom. And think of potential function. Maybe a pipe. What else? What else? Can you imagine a bottle without a bottom? What can it be used for? Pipe. How about something to grab herbs from in a shop with herbs? Well, that's one of the tools. I'll be telling you about more of them. Um, it's
Hi there.
sorry,
Have you noticed that the world is full?
just a moment. We're going to go back to subtracting in a moment. I thought I was going to be able to involve you a little bit more. It's one of the methods of thinking inside the box, which I will tell you about a little bit later. But now let's start with outside the box. This is something that probably a lot of you know. One of the processes that is very often used in the area of or considered as a nice process to think outside the box is design thinking. I'll show you a little film about design thinking to give you the most important bits of the process.
Hi there. Have you noticed that the world is full of problems? There are big, hairy problems like poverty and disease, and small annoyances like misplacing your keys. However, the geniuses at Stanford have come up with a process that will broaden your perspective and help you create better solutions no matter the type of problem. This process is called design thinking, and it's here to change the way you tackle problems. Design thinking encourages people to explore new alternatives, creating options that had not existed before. Design thinking is successful because it focuses on the needs of the user. It's more than just good ergonomics, it's about understanding the context and culture of the stakeholders involved. This understanding is found using direct observation and qualitative data, which produces stories that people can really empathize with. Once the research is conducted, the problem solver is more apt to define what the real problem is. After diagnosing the true problem, it's time to ideate or brainstorm new ideas without the constraints of existing solutions. Because design thinkers learn by doing, these radical ideas are then made into simple prototypes that test possible outcomes. Rapid prototyping speeds up the innovation process because we only learn about the quality of our ideas when we test them in the real world. The process of ideating, prototyping, and testing is repeated early on so that mistakes are quick, cheap, and ultimately lead to success. So, why design thinking? The process provides a method and a unifying language for multidisciplinary collaboration, leading to greater creativity and better solutions faster. Suddenly, the world's problems are simple and manageable with design thinking.
Well, design thinking is a method that we perceive as the outside the box thinking, because the predominant value that is driven from that is the fact that you gain loads of information from the outside world, especially from the users, from the consumers, from the customers, from various participants of the process of the business process that you will be running in the future. The process itself has got a very, very important element in it, which is the empathy. Design thinking actually requires from you to think both logically, analytically, let's say with your left side of the brain, but also it encourages you to empathize with your customer. And the nice thing about it is that if you go into the process while modeling your product, while modeling your service or your business, you attain a lot of information about also the customer experience. And as you probably can realize, your customer experience, it's not only let's say the very practical advantages that the customer attains. It's also other advantages that the customer is searching for. In a lot of cases, it's certain emotional advantages, and that particular process encourages you to understand what your customer feels, thinks, and what he does in terms of actions. It gives you loads of information that will help you to model your product and will help you to minimize the risk of creating a product that is far away from what the market actually wants, accepts, and demands. Probably one of the most popular scheme of designing the product based on the customer-driven processes. Is this particular scheme? Oh, sorry, there is a little bit. There is a Polish sentence in there. Well, that particular approach that allows you to, in a systematic way, define what your customer does, what are his pains, what are potential or required or demanded gains, helps you to then define the gain creators, pain relievers, and translate it into product services. And the aim of that approach is to basically answer yourself the question as early as possible. What is that particular unique value that you want to deliver to your client, for which your client is prepared to pay a premium, additional money, more than competition, for example? Because then that task, that experiment, or the ability to answer that question, as I said, will help you to minimize the risk, and is certainly, if the answer is positive, that your customer actually is prepared to pay extra for what you are proposing. That gives you, that is a good assumption for what's going to be next in your business. There is, however, with this particular approach, there is a little problem. About 1.5 years ago, we decided to use this particular process for modeling our own services around product and service development, called TestLab. Well, the aim of TestLab was to deliver services to people like yourself, to model the products, to test the products, to provide services supporting the phase of launch, and similar. Well, the problem was that this process lasted for 9 months, gave us a fantastic result, which we were not able to deliver. It was at a certain time of the development of the company not feasible. It was too far away from what the organization was capable of doing. And that's why it's quite valuable from time to time to go back to what is inside the box, inside the organization that you're running, or inside the team that you're working with. And a beautiful example of thinking inside the box when modeling your products, when modeling your business, when you're problem solving, when you're frustrated with the fact that something does not work, is something that is called SEAT. Well, we've come across SEAT only a few months ago, and we've implemented this method on 3 occasions now. And it seems that it's a beautiful method, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. Well, first of all, where does it come from? It comes from Russia. And the origin of the method was created by the guy called Genrich Altschuler. It's a German name. He was a guy working in St. Petersburg in a patent office. And for years and years, he was engaged in discovering the patterns that stand behind innovation. He himself was an innovator. The 40 or 50 year long research that he did was the basis of this particular method. SEAT, or systematic inventive thinking, basically it's based on a very simple assumption that our brain works in such a way that the function follows form. So, in other words, it's easier for us humans, all of us, with no exception, to visualize the form first and invent the function for the form next. And while studying all these different patterns of innovations, Genrich Altschuler and his followers defined a few ways of or winning ways, let's put it this way, successful ways of changing the form so that it gives us a good chance of inventing a new function for it, and thus creating inventive products and services. One of them is subtraction. Subtraction that, which I mentioned with a bottle. Subtraction, especially in comparison to addition, is a very, very powerful method of inventing new products and services, especially because it allows you to create something completely new that is non-existent to start with. Secondly, it does not, in majority of cases, is that it does not create additional costs. Normally, the method of addition, we normally, when we want to do something new, something innovating, we add functions, we add different features, we add components, elements. Well, that makes the product either too complex at the end or too expensive. Well, subtraction allows us to do it the other way around. It is really a very, very powerful method. Multiplication is another one. Multiplication, basically, it's about introducing a slightly modified component into the product or service. One of the simple examples to visualize what multiplication is a leveling tool made by a company called Capro. Leveling tool, like for construction. Well, leveling tool normally has 3 vials that allow you to double check whether the surface is okay, either vertically or horizontally. Well, Capro added 2 or 3 more vials showing different angles. For example, 1-2 degree angle to help people in construction to level out the floor in bathrooms when they need the water to slide to the whatever it's called in English. Well, you know where. So this is multiplication. Another one is task unification, and this is about assigning new attributes and functions to existing components. It's plain and simple. Division. This is about dividing the product or service into pieces, components, separating the components. One of a very simple example of using this tool is, probably you remember a long time ago in the cars we would have had the radios with the front panel that you could separate from the radio. Well, that is an example of a division. Obviously, separating the front panel from the car allowed to add additional function and create a competitive advantage in the product back then. And another one is attribute dependency change, which is an example of yet another process or yet another method of changing the product or creating a new product based on the fact that different features of the product have a relationship with its environment. And if you change it, then you can create, then you can attain or define a new competitive advantage. And for example, if you can imagine for eyeglasses with lenses that change the color depending on the amount of sunlight. Right? This is a very simple method. This process, the process of systematic inventive thinking that we use for generating ideas, by the way. So, in other words, thinking inside the box requires also very systematic work, generating loads and loads of absolutely crazy ideas, choosing the ones that the organization, the team believes has got a strong functional feature or creates a strong competitive advantage. And then at the end of the day, deciding which one is the best one to introduce. The We've talked about thinking outside the box, about design thinking, thinking inside the box, which is about generating the ideas inside your team. And now I would like to tell you a few words about prototyping and testing. Well, once you get to that point that you acquired the real knowledge from the outside world about what the consumers want, what they really need, and you've done your, let's say, user research or design thinking process. Once you've generated various ideas that you want to implement, one would think that, you know, everything could be okay. Well, you're never sure. You're never sure until you prototype and test. And as you probably know, the old method, the old way of building an innovative business was to first plan it, then to execute it, and then to learn and discover what happens in the end. Well, if you go and try to attain money from your investors, and if you fall into that pattern, you're you're risking that you're going to raise the money, you're going to oblige yourself to deliver various results to your investor, and you're going to follow the plan that you've presented to your investor. And sooner or later, you're going to find out that the plan is not happening. And then you got to go back to your investor and say, well, the plan is not happening. Well, what do you think the investor is going to tell you? Well, he's not going to be happy. And with the 20 companies that we've developing, after 2 years of working with them, with majority of them, we fell into the same problem. And at one point, we said, well, this is just a no-go. I mean, this is crazy. You know, having 15, frustrated founders with the fact that the plan is not going and being ourselves completely frustrated. We decided that we really do have to do it the right way. And this is why I encourage you very much to prototype, test, and iterate. Either if you decide to follow Lean Startup, I don't know whether any of you had read the manual, it's pretty complicated. You may find it too difficult, but if you just remember to prototype, test, and iterate, and tell your investor that you're going to do it the other way around, that you're not going to first plan your business, then execute it, and then find out what the market wants. Do it the other way around. Do your user research while using the outside thinking methods. Go outside, double check what the user really wants, what he wants to gain, where his pains are. Develop your product on the basis of that. Prototype and go out and test. You can test loads of things. You can test the functionality, you can test the security, you can test the sensoric response of the customer. You can test also the customer experience, being it in the usage environment, so when the customer is actually using the product, or in the sales environment. It doesn't matter. Test. There are methods, there are people, there are companies that will help you to test if you don't know how to do it. There are also people who can design very, very cheap experiments to double check whether your product works in different areas. You can also test revenue models. You can design them in different ways and test them. Just know it's possible, and keep in mind that you can do it. There is no point in making that huge plan of how your business is going to work, launching it, doing it, and then finding out that something little tiny didn't work and the whole business didn't work out in the end. Well, what I'm proposing to you is to really, really go the pathway of either Lean Startup or, just as I said, remembering to test every single thing as soon as possible. And obviously thinking holistically. This is the business canvas model. You probably know it. Well, I have no clue why people don't use it. It's plain and simple, and it helps you to look at your business holistically. It's probably the simplest method of describing each and every piece of your business. which is obviously the value proposition for the customer, your relation with particular segments of clients. Who are your segments of clients? Why did you divide them in such a way? What distinguishes them? How does it influence the product? And obviously the various sales channels, the revenue streams, your key activities, your key resources, partnerships, and the structure of costs. In plenty of places in the internet, you will find manuals or questions, basically the list of questions for each and every part of that, of Business Canvas model, and ask yourself that questions. It's fun to answer them. It's a nice intellectual challenge, but it gives you. It structurizes your way of thinking about your business. It also will help you to pinpoint those elements that you haven't thought of yet. And this is what I would encourage you strongly. And a little bit contrary to Anja Heika said, I would tell you, don't fight. Mahatma Gandhi did not fight. Even though the whole world fought with Mahatma Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi had a fantastic focus on the road and on the quality of actions and endeavors. And this is what I would tell you. Focus on the road. Obviously have the intention, have your goal in mind, but focus on the road and on the quality of the process. There is a great value in it, and you will definitely go through that pathway of building an innovative business in a nicer, in a lot of cases funnier way. Thank you.